Okay, in which case we're going to move on to today's deep dive topic. So it's time for me to introduce Sophie Wright. Sophie and I met when we were both engaged as fractionals at the same time and same client. Sophie is a CFO, me as a CTO. Today, though, Sophie's running a multi-award winning fractional CFO agency, helping startups and scale ups. And she's here today to talk about how cash management can make or break your business when you're scaling up. So, welcome, Sophie. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so right, I'm just introduced myself. I've already been introduced, but I'm Sophie Wright. I've been working in finance for 27 years. The last 10 of those have been running my business, Wright CFO, and we're a team of 9 fractional CFOs. And we help businesses who are ambitious, who want to scale up. So that's what we do. And I'm going to talk about how cash management can make or break your business when you're scaling up. So the 2 areas I would really love for you to take away after this is, one, just to have a cash management mindset. So with whatever decision you're making in your business, just always ask yourself, what is the cash effect of this happening? And then the next thing is just always to think a few steps ahead, and just always think of the future and how that's going to affect. It'll be more clear shortly, but that's what I would love for the takeaways to be. So there's a lot I could say on this, and I don't want to just tell you everything I know about cash management. So I'm going to use an example of a business I worked with as fractional CFO for 4 years, and they are a perfect example of a business that has scaled very quickly, and how they did that. I'm going to tell you how they did that and how they used cash management tools and processes to be able to make that happen. So they did games and puzzles. They're in the UK and they manufacture their products out of China. When I started with them, they were about $1 million in revenue. They made a small profit. Their client base was they had hundreds of clients, but they were all kind of really small shops, like mom and pop shops, toy shops, bookstores, corner shops, that kind of thing. So that's where they were when I started. And then one day, CEO and the sales director came into the office, gathered everybody around, and they were kind of delirious. And they had just won a £1 million deal with Sainsbury's for Christmas. And it was very exciting. They'd never, they had pitched to big corporates before and never got them, but this was the first one they won. And there was also, it wasn't just all happiness, there was also absolute panic, because if you're going to sell £1 million worth of goods, they had to spend 500 grand first to get it into production, which they did not have. So that posed the first challenge. So what we did was, we called our bank immediately and we told them about, they were all very excited because they could sell us products. And the CEO and the financial controller, myself, and a couple of people from HSBC came to the office, and we mapped out how this was going to work. And we did it through 2 debt finance products. So the first one was trade finance. And what that means was, so we would have a purchase order, say there's an order put in, we have a signed off purchase order from the factory in China. We send that purchase order to the bank. The bank pays the factory directly, which is great because, rather than sending it to the client and they maybe misspend or whatever. So they send it directly to the factory. The factory receives it and can start production. And then you have credit terms of, I think it was maybe 60 days. Okay, the product's made, gets on a container ship, goes to Southampton. We can't raise the sales invoice until we've proved that the goods have reached Southampton. When that happens, well, at this point, we have to pay back the trade finance, and we've only just said, raised the sales invoice to the client. So that's when sales invoice finance comes in. If you don't know what that is when the bank or whatever financial institution you're using will pay you a percentage, say between 70 and 90% of the value of your sales invoice upfront, just for cash flow. So we had that. So we've raised the invoice, get the sales, get that in, and we use that to pay back the trade finance. And now we've got a new loan we have to pay back in 90 days. The client pays in 60 and we can pay that off. And so this seamless kind of cycle, which worked really, really well. You have to make sure everybody pays, but it worked really well. And so what happens is everyone was really excited that it did work well, and they just kept pitching for, if we can win things, we can win others. And they would pitch for more and more corporate clients. And it's a bit like a winning sports team. Once you start winning, a winning streak is a real phenomenon. And I think they were just winning everything that they were pitching for. And, they got John Lewis, all the major grocery stores. They just got loads of businesses, and they grew really fast. And everything was just looking great. So that's all well and good. But what if they can't pay? Because you've borrowed the first bit, fine. You borrow the second bit, you can pay the first one off. The company, the client can pay, you pay the second debt off. What if they don't pay? You're screwed. So at the time, one of their clients was Debenhams, and Debenhams was in a lot of trouble. And they owed about 400 grand, and they're getting really late and later in paying. And there was a real risk that all of this could just fall apart. Now, ways to mitigate this. Firstly, it's important to, if you're going to give any clients credit to pay, you need to just check that they can do so, and you can do their different resources you can use, but you do a credit check on them. If they don't pass the credit check, you don't give them credit. You say pay right away. That's it. In this case, those kind of credit checks the information would be too historical. We were really looking at the news and looking at Debenhams on the news at the time, every day. And so what we did was, we called it a credit, we called it an insurance broker. And there's something called a credit insurance, and they will, you upload your receivables, so everything that your clients owe you, and they will insure you for a percentage of it. And we got many quotes, and what happened was, recurringly, all our quotes were that they would insure all of the debtors apart from Debenhams. So then we found a product, and I'm calling it special insurance. It's not called that, but I don't remember what it's called, but it was very special. And they will insure specific invoices that are high risk, and they will insure them. Now, it's expensive. I think we paid something like, I want to say £8,000, I think we insured it for. We didn't need to use it, and they did pay, but it was so worth it, because what if they didn't? And I think that the takeaway so far with this is, one, with this cycle, it may not apply to you if you may not have a kind of a £1 million sale, but actually it does apply in the sense that you should just map out, no matter how small or big your sales are, you should map out, when do you have to pay what it is that you're selling? When is it going to come in? And just map it out. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, you get a finance person to do it for you. But, and always be risk averse. Don't think, oh, everyone's going to pay early. Always be risk averse and just make sure you know what's happening. And the second takeaway is to mitigate any of these risks because you're so vulnerable when you're growing fast like that. And you feel so great because you're winning all this business, but actually you are very vulnerable. And so I would suggest, make a list of the risks, the things that can go wrong, and what are all the things that you could do to prevent that from happening or have a least worst effect. Okay, so in this case, it was the credit insurance. So what happened to them? Well, they made the Sunday Times Fast Track 100 2 years in a row. They went from 1 million in the 4 years I was there, they went up to 20 million. It was really fast growth. I helped them open up a US business subsidiary in the US. And it was a real great scaling success story. None of which would have been able to happen if they didn't go through all this kind of meticulous cash management process. So key takeaways, always think ahead. Always know how you're going to pay for what you sell. I speak to founders a lot, and often, people are making a profit and they think, well, how come I don't have any cash in the bank? And it's something, you really need to get your head around. Map out your cash flow, or have someone do it, identify risks. Another question is, all this borrowing, it's expensive. So, you don't want it to eat away at your margins. But if you know that you're going to borrow to be able to sell, when you're doing your costing and what you're going to charge your client, you add it in. You let them pay for it. So just add it into your costs. And then the other thing is, many founders think that you need to raise equity to really scale, and you need investors and you need to raise capital. And, that is a big part of what we do. But you are giving away part of your business doing that. And, I think debt finance is an underrated way of growing, and it's really useful. And I'm not saying, if the sales aren't there and you don't have the money to pay your expenses, that you should borrow. No, you shouldn't, because you won't be able to pay it back. But in this sense, the sales are there and it's to be able to grow, then I think it's a really good way of doing it. All clients are very different, but I think the opportunities are huge when you really understand how you can use cash management like this to scale. Happy to answer any questions. And also, I know not everyone feels comfortable asking questions about money in a public environment, but if anyone wanted to ask me privately or to ask me questions or talk to me about anything like that, then I'd be happy to do that. That's it.